What is up, YouTube? I'm Devon DaVinci, leader of the Renaissance crew, and you're watching DaVinci Reacts. Today I have another reaction to Tierzoo, which is a YouTube channel. Hopefully by now you know about them. They are a channel that pretty much takes videos related to animals, information about animals, trivia about animals, and turns it into, well, they also make tier lists of animals, obviously, and they turn it into this game meta explanation where they take video game elements in order to describe the attributes and characteristics of specific animals. This episode is called, this video is called Are Hippos OP? So this looked interesting to me because hippos are one of the most underrated killers in the animal kingdom. They kill more humans than crocodiles, tigers, bears, sharks. Just like, they're pretty goddamn deadly. So with that being said, let's jump into this, see what it has to offer. I'm looking forward to seeing what they have to describe about this, because this isn't a tier list video, I believe. So I'm not really sure what they're going to do with it, but it is going to be interesting to check out. Anyway, let's go. Ooh, ooh.
This episode is sponsored by Dashlane.
He grabbed that line by the head.
Africa.
That's almost
the game's
like instant
hardcore
death.
server. On top of the potentially lethal heat and disease debuffs, many of the most powerful builds in the game are playable only on the Africa server. Everyone knows the big names. Elephants are the biggest, cheetahs are the fastest, cobras are the most venomous, etc. However, one of the builds that frequently gets overlooked is the hippopotamus. Even though none of their stats are the best in a single category, there are things that they do better than anything else. So today I'm going to give an overview of the hippopotamus's stats and abilities, talk about its good and bad matchups, and where I'd rate it in the overall tier list. I've already done one video that sort of touches on all these things, but since it was one of the first videos I ever made, it's pretty lacking in quality, so hopefully this guide will do a better job doing the topic justice. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into it. Hippos are the premier tank build of the African aquatic meta. Their success comes from a combination of phenomenal stats and from speccing into abilities that allow for some pretty ingenious exploitation of the game's water physics, which I'll get into in a bit. But first, their stats. So you can probably notice that the Hippo stats are, in a word, phenomenal. They have one of the highest HP levels of any land build, second only to the elephant.
And the
Normally,
rhinoceros.
builds with one unusually high base stat tend to have major shortcomings in other areas, but the Hippo simply doesn't. While its intelligence is only average, all the
Really? Octopuses have short lifespans? I did not know that. Now I'm going to have to look up how long an octopus on average lives.
in other areas, but the Hippo simply doesn't. While its intelligence is only average, all the rest of their stats far outclass most other African builds. They have great damage, high defense, and even have great stealth for a build in such a high weight class.
Not to mention they're kind of speedy considering how big they are. You wouldn't think that something that size would be able to run as fast as it can.
But perhaps the most surprising is their mobility level, which relates to how their abilities let them engage in physics engine exploits like I mentioned earlier. So in addition to having relatively high run speed on land, hippos are also unbelievably mobile in the water. Now, normally when designing your character to be fast in the water, you spec into traits like, water mobility. Things like a streamlined body, fins, flukes, webbed feet, all these things strictly buff water speed, and usually are the go-to for players trying to take their character to new depths in the aquatic meta. The Hippo player base decided to do exactly none of that, instead dumping most of their evolution points into pure bulk and muscle.
That's actually funny because, hippos can't float. They spend all their time, like, walking underwater. They can't float. So it's like when they are trying to travel, it's like they either swim or they just sink to the bottom and then just run along the ground. The ground of the water? That sounds weird, but you know what I mean when I say that. They run along the ground in the water.
As a result, hippos are so dense that, unlike most animals, they do not float. This lets them be one of the only builds that can actually use the run movement option underwater with any success. So yeah, hippos, despite not actually being able to swim, have one of the best aquatic movement options in the game, and they didn't even have to spend any evolution points on aquatic mobility to do so. So, hippos have 4 signature abilities, the first being their water dash ability that I just explained. Their second ability is their 2-inch thick skin. This ability is the reason behind their high defense level, and it grants them some of the best resistances in the game, particularly to the common threats in the African server. It grants them near total immunity to slash and bite type damage, since claws and teeth simply are too short to pierce their skin. This lets them shrug off the...
Okay, now this is something I want to know about. Yes, I know that they have the thick hide, which allows them to pretty much negate any damage from claws and teeth and stuff like that. But do they still feel it? Like, do they still have nerve endings that stretch throughout those 2 inches of fat protection? If you cut a hippo, will it hurt? I'm pretty sure it'll bleed too. I don't know how much it would take to cause one to bleed out, but if you cut it enough times, even if the cuts haven't gone deep enough to like penetrate their, I was about to say skin, but what's like epidermis, I guess. Even if it's not strong enough to go like that deep past their fat layers, would it still be significant enough to cause them to bleed out? I'd like to know that.
Grants them near total immunity to slash and bite type
Move over a
damage,
bit.
since claws and teeth simply are too short to pierce their skin. This lets them shrug off the vast majority of standard attacks in the African meta, and is also crucial for letting them survive attacks even from groups of enemies, which is normally the answer to defeating a high HP target.
If this were true, that thing's
Defending
still
from
gonna
physical
die.
attacks is important, but it's just as critical to make sure your elemental resistances are adequate too. Because hippos have spec'd into the hairless trait in order to minimize mobility debuffs in the water, they're highly vulnerable to solar damage. In order to mitigate this issue, hippos have spec'd into sweat that grants them UV resistance and, as an added bonus, grants them resistance to infection, another hugely beneficial trait to have when you spend most of your time in unclean water, potentially with open wounds.
That hippo has
The only downside is
been
that
to war.
while active, it gives the hippo players a reddish tint, temporarily lowering their stealth level. Their last special trait is their tusks. Hippos haven't spec'd into carnivory or even omnivory. They're strictly herbivorous and can't gain any XP from meat. However, regardless of this fact, they have one of the most damaging bites in the game. On top of the sheer force of the bite itself, which is around a ton by the way, their tusks deal massive damage to anything they puncture.
Boy.
But on top of the hippo's damage potential, their tusks offer another important benefit, intimidation. So the most effective intimidation techniques are the ones that can be quickly switched on and off.
Damn, there's some big ass
A coral
gums.
snake's colors are always bright, and a spider is always creepy, but hippos aren't always terrifying. In fact, most of the time they appear non-threatening.
Downright
Yet in an
adorable.
instant, they can crank up the intimidation to 100 just by opening their mouths. A hippo player with intimidation active is one of the most intimidating things in the entire game, easily being able to scare off even some of the bulkiest builds like rhinos. Okay, so for matchups, hippos sport one of the most comfortable matchup spreads possible. Because they're highly resistant to bite and slash attacks, most of the relevant predator matchups, such as crocodiles, lions, hyenas, and painted dogs, are highly favorable for the hippo. On top of this, the hippo's own attacks can one-shot any of those predators. As for bad matchups, any builds that focus on stab-type weaponry can definitely give a hippo a hard time. In particular, elephants and rhinos both have long enough horns or tusks to pierce the hippo's thick skin and deal critical damage to if they're foolish enough to challenge them.
Ouch.
Fortunately, the rhino's low intelligence makes it highly susceptible to intimidate abilities, so that matchup is by no means unwinnable. Elephants, though, they'll walk straight through a group of hippo players, knowing none of them will
The
challenge.
disrespect.
Also, ironically, one of the
You
worst
just slapped the
matchups
hell
for
out of
a
a hippo.
is another hippo, since a hippo's tusks do have the potential to pierce their defenses. The last important matchup to discuss for them is how they fare against humans, and in this regard, they've got one of the best records of all. Obviously, they still lose to the highly advanced equipment that humans have recently unlocked, but aside from that, humans don't have any way to combat them. As a result, hippos have the highest KD ratio versus humans in the entire game. Even special high-level
500.
mounts like boats and trucks can be taken down by a hippo. So where do hippos belong on the tier list? Well, considering how they're basically unstoppable tanks that manage to spec into an excellent semi-aquatic playstyle without sacrificing any land-based abilities to do so, it's tough to argue that they're anything but S tier. They easily control any rivers or lakes that they're in, being even more dominant than crocodiles.
That's actually interesting because if you look at this, he puts elephants at B tier. And even though it's not like just because they can beat one thing, it guarantees they can beat other stuff. It's still interesting that elephants aren't an S tier animal. I mean, usually when you get that big, it gets to a point where you have very few enemies, if any at all, and very few matchups that really work against you. So I'm wondering what are the negatives for elephants that puts them on B tier. Maybe how much food they require. Like they require so much food that you're just like constantly eating, and it takes away from your ability to like go out and survive, I guess. I don't know. I'm not sure what puts the elephant on B tier.
Anything but S tier. They easily control any rivers or lakes that they're in, being even more dominant than crocodiles. In fact, while currently the vast majority of the Hippo player base is in the African server, a few of them have recently broken into the South American meta. Now, hippos have one of the lower spawn rates in the game, so it'll be a while before we can really assess their viability in servers outside of Africa, but I would bet that eventually hippos will be one of the most dominant builds in South America too, especially since they have great matchups against the top tiers there too, like the caiman and the jaguar.
Didn't even know hippos were in South
Might
America.
give them a hard time though, so we'll have to wait and see. Their thick hide offers a lot of protection, but with hundreds of bites chipping it away, even the hippo might struggle. Protecting your hit points is critical to survival in the current meta, but perhaps equally important is protecting your passwords, and that's where today's sponsor Dashlane comes in. Dashlane is what I personally use to protect my passwords and keep myself safe online, because it literally does everything. It's not just a password manager, it's not just a VPN, it's not just a dark web monitoring service, it's all three. Everything you could possibly need to keep your internet defense level at its max. My favorite feature of Dashlane is how it autofills every online login form on every website, as well as autofilling payments for online checkouts.
Interesting.
It does this across all of my devices, so I never have trouble logging in, even though I use passwords that are really tough to memorize and easy to mess up when I'm typing them in. Not only is Dashlane secure, but it makes my online life easier all the time. Believe me, as someone who's forgotten passwords more than my fair share of times, it's saved me countless headaches over the course of the past year. You can try Dashlane for free by using the link in the description of this video, and you'll be supporting my content in doing so. And by using the code tierzoo, you can even get 10% off the premium membership. Thank you all for watching, and
I might have to check this Dashlane thing out, at least to give it a look. But yeah, it's interesting he puts hippos at S tier and elephants at B tier. I don't know exactly what the payoff or what the cons of the elephant are that makes them go that far down, especially when you consider elephant or hippos don't have a lot of predators that can go against them, and then you take elephants who have even less. It's like, okay, what's the deal here? But yeah, anytime you're talking about animals that have like a big size difference among other animals, you're talking about animals that make it to the S. Well, usually when you get talking about S tier animals, you're talking about animals that have really high intelligence. So that's when you get to apes, domestic animals, usually humans, things like that. The only thing that can really match that intelligence gap is the size gap. Things that pretty much make you the top of your food chain, and those are the only two areas. Either you completely outsmart everything in your area, or you just dominate everything in your area, and hippos are one of those. Rhinos would be, but the problem with the rhinos are the problem with rhinos is that they're stupid. Like they're very stupid, and they have very bad eyesight. So it's like a rhino will attack another rhino if it ain't paying attention, even when they don't mean to. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there are situations where rhinos have attacked their own kids because they simply were not able to recognize them past a certain distance. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. If there are more animal related videos that you want me to do reactions to, leave them in the comment section down below with hashtag DaVinci Reacts. And I will go ahead and try to give it a look. There are specific types of videos that I want to do more of that really interest me. Videos related to animals, videos related to sports, videos related to video games. These are videos that I want to do more of. So you'll probably see a few more of those types of videos coming in. I also want to do more Try Not to Laughs. Adik the One just recently started doing more Try Not to Laugh videos again after a long hiatus, and I'm checking those out. But with that being said, this video was provided by tierzoo, obviously. If you want to check out more of his content, there will be a link inside this video. The last 30 seconds, it'll pop up. You can click on it, go to their channel, watch their videos, subscribe, like, all the other good stuff. And I will have a link in the description box that will take you to the original channel, the original video, if you want to do that. Best way you can support their channel is to watch their content. What I would well, besides obviously doing the promo codes, watch their videos. If you don't feel like watching the video twice, what I recommend is opening the video in a new window or a new tab, putting it on mute, and having it play in the background while you browse the internet, watch other videos, all the good stuff. By the time you remember that it's playing and go back to it, it'll already be finished, and you'll give them a view as well as whatever you were doing. So if you haven't seen the video already, please show them some support if you enjoyed it. With that being said, I'm Devon DaVinci. Hopefully you've been a little bit more enlightened. I look forward to seeing you guys in a future video. Until then, I'm giving you the deuces, and I'm signing out. Peace.